So the children can't formally go to school, they're restricted.
No, they can't. Technically they can't, but different groups have been able to make different arrangements. There was a family a couple of years ago that had a family in a Franciscan priory, and the Franciscans were able to get the kids into the local Catholic school, and one of them would walk with them to school and pick them up. And at least that was really good. That was, especially if you've got a lot of kids.
And is most care done secretively? I gather the plan is not ever run by immigration department to say this is what, clearly that wouldn't be done, I guess.
Say this again?
You would not run your plan by immigration department saying this is how we're running sanctuary, would you rubber stamp it? I guess you do your own thing.
Yes, obviously we're not getting direction from the immigration department. Because what they would do is just deport them.
Right.
Yeah. There never has been, really in 20 years, any case where immigration officials just went into a church and took somebody. There was a case of a man in the Hindu temple in Vancouver, but he had wandered outside and they picked him up then. And there was somebody 30 years ago in Montreal, a church in Montreal, but there was an arrest warrant out for him. He had robbed a convenience store or something, and so they picked him up on that charge.
So, Mary Jo, this is one of the questions I had and was somewhat touched on by this person. Legally, it's not recognized by the government, the whole sanctuary movement, so that people who are under its rubric would be untouchable, in a sense, by the government or by immigration. Is that the case, or?
Well, this has never been tested in court. In the law, there's this section in the immigration law about aiding and abetting illegals, and it mostly has to do with bringing people into the country. And a person charged under that could be charged $50,000 or 2 years in prison. More. That's about the only section that could maybe apply. But in fact, it never has been. And what we do when a group is considering sanctuary is say, consider the worst. There could be a big fine. But also know, in fact, a church has never been violated or charged or anything, because there is this tradition, custom of you do not violate the religious property conviction. You just don't. And I also don't think this government really wants to do that. That's but I also think it's very important, like in myself, I've said, could I handle $50,000 fine? No, because it isn't there. So, 2 years in jail, well, okay. Yeah. But you have to sort of just check that off in yourself. That's what I feel.
So the immigration officials, if they've given notice to a couple or a family that they are going to be deported, and then they can't find them or whatever, that they don't say, well, listen, it's our right to come in, church or no church, and arrest them and send them back. That's never happened.
No.
Okay.
So a person gets a date. Okay, on this date you have to come to the airport. We'll put you on a plane. If you don't appear, you immediately become illegal. That's the issue.
So they're living under a warrant?
Yes,
in sanctuary.
they're living under an immigration warrant, which is not the same as a criminal warrant.
What's the average length of time a family or individual will be in sanctuary?
It's gone, I'm not sure I could say what the average is. Like this couple, it might be 6 months, which is short, because of this legal action. Most, it's a year and a half. There's one person that's been in sanctuary for 3 years. So I think it's a serious commitment. This is not like a couple of days, you know, it's not an emergency shelter. It's a very serious commitment. But again, to go back to, I've been involved in the sanctuary movement for 22 years now. And the universal experience, I think, is this is a really hard thing to do for a congregation. It's very demanding. But I hear every one of those congregations saying, do you know, this was our finest moment as a church. This is when we really knew we were a church community, that we were living the good news. It's like the gospel began to walk among us. Everything became real. Love your neighbor, feed the hungry, do good to those who hate you. Everything lived in a very profound way. And it's this thing of the church becomes weighty, consequential, significant. And what's very interesting, and I don't know the particulars of your community, but I do know, in general, most churches have problems, you know, financial, personnel, groups, this, that, you know, everybody has problems. But when you get a big problem, you know, the other stuff just you're nodding. Yeah, it just goes, it's just not that important. So it becomes this core Samaritan experience where a church community sifts, you know, what it's about, what it values, what it cares about. But I think it's very important that if you ever get such a request, that you feel free to say no. You know, you shouldn't feel guilty or bad, or because, you know, it depends on willingness, you know, the wanting. You know, we're doing this because we want to. If you don't feel that, I would say don't do it. It would not be a good thing for you. So it would have to have spiritually like a sense of this is good, this is right, we can do this. No, I think that's really, really important. John?
Could you say something about Romero House and about the relationship between Romero House and your work with Sanctuary? Is there any relationship between those two?
Technically, no. We're trying to sort of separate Romero House from the sanctuary aspect. Like, for example, we would not have people living in Romero in sanctuary because technically we're not a church property, although we're church people. I would say the link is that, and it was at the origin of the sanctuary movement 22 years ago. At Romero House, we welcome refugees when they first arrive in the country. And I think what's unique about our welcome is that I guess we're technically the staff, but we live in the houses with the people. So they are not our clients. You know, they're in fact our neighbors. So we know them really well, and we have a relationship of neighborliness, so that if this would happen to one of them, we would know them so well that we would say, you know, they absolutely cannot go. And so then we get mobilized in another way. So it's the relationship, the profound neighborliness that leads to this. Yes,
Did that cardboard box ever come back?
the cardboard box.
Of this couple, the child?
Oh, they are the ones that I said then went to the Anglican Priory, which is where they are.
Did the cardboard box full of their documentation?
Oh,
Back?
yes,
It did.
yes, we got that back. I think the lawyer had to file almost like a seizure document. He had to it was in the office somewhere, but it was really, really atrocious what happened. And, you know, truthfully, many of refugee claims that go wrong, I am guessing 70% are because of corrupt lawyers and immigration, legal, paralegals, just making money off of people.
This is what you mean by the scoopers.
The scoopers.
Yeah.
And like, people just, you can set it up as a kind of, oh, the bad immigration system, the good refugees. But there's this group of people that are really just making money. And we've made many complaints to the Law Society, but these cases are not very high on their list. And by the time they get around to investigating people, the person's deported. So what we are trying now is, with this particular paralegal, is we've had a meeting with the director of Ontario Legal Aid, and we said, look, this hasn't just happened to this couple, this has happened to 300 families. 300 that we know of. And so this is why the minister says, oh, well, the Roma from Hungary, they just abandon their claims, so they're not serious. It's not abandoned. It's 4 lawyers with 300 cases each, 1,200 families that have just been
The lawyer disappeared.
just terrible. So we had a meeting with the head of Ontario Legal Aid. We had all of our ducks in a row. And she was extremely sympathetic. She said, this is taxpayer money. It's not meant for this. So where there's money involved, there's more action. That's all I can say.